get started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Fasting Method podcast. This is Dr. Terri Lance, and I am so excited to be talking with Dr. Nadia Pataguana today. We have not done an episode together in a while, so I'm super excited to get to kind of pick each other's brains and share what we have to discuss with you today. Nadia, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Terri. So yesterday I sent Terri a message because I really wanted to discuss this topic with her. And I do think that this will be another one that I'll be referencing all the time. Like, it's become a habit of mine to reference episode 105 with you almost every day when I talk to clients, because sometimes, Terri's used to this, sometimes I'll come up with, I'm a very practical person. I'm always full of strategies, right? But sometimes I'll come up with a conundrum that for me is a huge conundrum and I cannot solve. And I will tell people in the groups, or I'll tell my coaching clients, like, I just do not have the skills to deal with this. It's a total behavior, emotional behavioral problem, concern. And I feel so lucky that we have you around, Terri, to pick your brain. So yes, we have cheated on you guys and have talked about this a little bit beforehand, but we're going to really get into a lot of detail about this topic. So I don't know, should I introduce the topic, Terri? Or my question to you?
I think we're ready.
Okay, so here's what I asked Terri yesterday, basically. I have been a naturopath for 20 years. This year exactly is my 20th year in clinic. And I have been with TFM, IDM at the time, for 8 years. This will be my 8th year. And here's what I am starting to realize. I mean, people have been telling us for a really long time. And now we're starting to realize it and sort of see the repercussions of it, which is I'm seeing people that have been with me or on their own doing intermittent fasting and quote unquote therapeutic fasting for 6 to 8 years. And it's had a tremendous impact. Now, I want to say this properly because I think therapeutic fasting and intermittent fasting are wonderful healing tools, right? I think intermittent fasting, especially TRE, and I'm actually working on a masterclass right now, Terri, as you know, on TRE. I think it is and should be the epitome of intermittent fasting in a lifestyle. So you do full meals, no snacks for the rest of your life at every phase of your journey to kickstart your therapeutic, to enhance your therapeutic fast, for maintenance, for longevity, TRE, intermittent fasting, all the way. Therapeutic fasting, on the other hand, is something that is a lot more intense. It's therapeutic, which means that most therapies, at least, especially these intensive acute therapies, you do intensively for 3 to 6 months, sometimes a year, in extreme situations. But what happens and what are people reporting and what are we seeing that is happening to people because, and we'll get into this, lack of consistency, not following through with your protocol for those 3 to 6 months, being extremely inconsistent, you end up, quote unquote, doing therapeutic fasting for 6 to 8 years. What kind of an impact does that have on you as a person, on your family life, and probably a lot more? I hope that this is clear to you guys what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing intermittent fasting or TRE for the rest of your life. What I'm saying is, and I know all of you come into it, once you understand it, come into it with the right intent, which is I'm going to do alternate day fasting or whatever strategy you've come up with therapeutically for 3 to 6 months, get this over with, reverse diabetes, reverse my PCOS, lose 100 pounds, whatever it may be. And then life gets in the way. I know that's why it happens. I know that there's nothing wrong with you. I know it happens because you're human. I know it's probably happened to more of you than we would even like to admit. But why are there so many people within our community even, and people doing this on their own possibly, or people that we've coached, even with a coach? Why haven't you been able to not only reach your goal in a swift amount of time, but basically have this quote unquote diet mentality with fasting and have been doing this for 6 to 8 years, meaning that your family and those around you are watching you go days on end without eating for years on end. And this is why sometimes you will say to us, oh, people say that what I'm doing is unhealthy, or my partner, my husband, or my kid, I'm so worried because my teenage daughter is watching me not eat. Well, I agree. I don't think your teenage daughter should be watching you for years on end go through these quote unquote therapeutic, more extended fast. I think therapeutic fasting is something ideally, so Terry's going to help break this down for us, I know, because we've talked about it, but ideally is something that you do for 3 to 6 months, whether you do it openly so that your children are old enough and are aware of it, or there's so little that they won't even know and understand until they're old enough. You can definitely get away with doing this. And your husband or spouse or partner is very likely to be more supportive of this 3 to 6 month journey, as opposed to, after 6 years, your spouse or your child is saying, but again, you're not going to eat. Again, you're not going to eat. And often, and I share this with Terry, so I'm dropping a whole load on you, Terry. I know, a bomb. But often I'll hear my clients say, I want to do alternate day fasting, but I can't for A, B, C, D. So then I just eat one meal a day every single day. But I end up drinking a bottle of wine and eating And so to compensate for that, I won't eat for a day, or I won't have dinner with my kids. And it's like, okay, am I the only one seeing that this is not good? But then I don't always know how to help people with that. Okay, well, I'll start with that. What do you have to say about that, Terry?
Well, Nadia, as you were talking, I was thinking about 10 or 15 different points that you brought up that are all really important. So I'm sure we won't cover all of them completely today, but I hope that this really opens up this dialogue and kind of jogs some people's action in this. I think one of the important things that we've talked about in previous episodes, and I know Megan talks a lot about in the community, in master classes and things, is this idea of a therapeutic fast. Not meaning you're going to do this for the next 40 years, but the overall lifestyle that we're promoting you are going to do for the next 40 years. So some of you have heard me talk before about creating an identity around these behaviors. Now, I don't mean that you have to create an identity of this therapeutic fasting forever. But as you mentioned, Nadia, the time-restricted eating, I think that's one that all of us could work on making part of our identity. Whether we're in a therapeutic fasting place in our life or a maintenance level of fasting, TRE is there. What foods we eat, what foods work for our body, what foods hold our body back, really paying attention to that and learning that. But what a lot of us do is, as humans, we want the biggest bang for our buck. We want the big results right now. And we all know we don't get big results in this area real quickly. It takes time. It takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of work. And what a lot of us do is we enter into it at times when we're not actually ready. Let's say, for example, it's a super stressful time at work and you're having some challenges at home. There's some family dynamics that are, problematic and things. And your car doesn't work. Like, you're juggling all these things. Maybe today isn't the best day for me to jump into this therapeutic fasting. So making sure I'm in a good place. And then I jump in and I stay in. Now, that doesn't mean perfection, and it doesn't mean, no matter what, I push myself all the way to the very edge, but we stay in the game. Let's say someone had a goal of running a marathon, And you don't just start and say, okay, this year I'm going to run a marathon, so tomorrow I'm going to go run 26 miles. No, you have to start with getting up to 1 mile. And then when you can do 2, and you gradually increase it. But you get to this therapeutic level where you're running 10 miles, 12 miles, 14 miles. Most of them can't go through periods of time where they're running 14, 15 miles and then months where they only run 1 mile because they're not getting to that next place. They're not developing the muscle or, that ability to get to that next place. So if I watch someone in that arena, kind of the way I see some people addressing the fasting is they'll run 10 miles and then they won't run again for another couple of months. And they wonder why it's not working. Why am I not getting my goal met with my running? Because you're doing it once and then stopping. Or you're doing it for 3 weeks and then stopping. And that's what a lot of us end up doing with the fasting. We jump in, we can't maintain it, and we jump back out. And then we're kind of afraid to jump back in. And many of you might be even at this place right now because it's the beginning of a year. Lots of people are kind of looking at what they want to accomplish in 2024. And this goes to the top of the list for some people. So one of the things I was thinking when you first brought this up is I tend to talk in analogies. It helps me make sense of things when I have something to kind of imagine it looking like or feeling like. And it made me think a little bit of financial well-being and debt. There was a period of time in my life where I had a significant amount of debt. As I think about this and how it relates with fasting, hopefully this will make sense. I got to the point where I realized I've got to do something kind of big, because if I just pay off $20 of this debt a month, I am working on it, but I'm going to be working on it for the next 45 years. And by the time I'm done paying off this debt, I will have paid 10 times the amount of the actual amount I owed in the beginning. So yes, I am doing something about it. I am taking steps, but not steps that are really going to help me get there without a lot of challenges. The other thing is I could go the full opposite extreme. I could start paying every dollar I had to my debt, and then I wouldn't be able to go out with my friends. I wouldn't be able to buy the things I needed. I would be, my laptop would be 18 years old and not working anymore because all of that money was going to the debt. So I kind of see people in the fasting world do one of these two extremes. They push too fast, too hard, and there are a lot of consequences for that, and it impacts other people in our life. You never go out with them because you're always fasting, or you never have dinner with your family because you're always fasting. And maybe you get there and maybe you don't to the results you're looking for. Or you're chipping away at it so gradually, but your family, friends, colleagues, or whatever hear about it a lot and see it a lot. But unfortunately, it's just costing you a lot and it's costing them. And you mentioned this, Nadia, when you were kind of describing the scenario. Oftentimes, there gets to be some tension around this. And I know, as someone who has dieted much of my life, unfortunately, sometimes people don't believe what I say anymore because I say, well, I'm doing this. And they see me struggle with it. They see me not make progress. And then, the next time we hang out, well, I'm doing this now. And I know clients and community members have shared their partner or their best friend might almost roll their eyes at them. Oh, you're doing this today. Okay. Because they're not getting to see you do it consistently and get the results. So in this financial analogy, what I really wanted to highlight is I could take either approach on the extreme that wouldn't really work. I could go too hard, too fast, and suffer a lot of consequences because of that. And by then, I'm going to have to buy all new things that I haven't been able to buy during that time. So I'm going to create more debt as soon as I get there, right? Or I could go so slowly that it's like painstakingly doing it, but not seeing the results and all of the consequences of that, versus figuring out, how do I work on this debt for 2 years? What's the plan? Now, the debt example is probably longer time frame than the fasting example, but rather than 20 years of paying down this debt, how can I pay this debt off in 2 years? What are you thinking there, Nadia? I can see your face. Listeners can't, but
I'm going crazy because I could not think of a better analogy. The only thing I disagree with you is that I don't think that the debt analogy would be a longer. I think that my experience at this point shows me that very easily people could be doing this for 10 plus years and doing exactly what you just described. People around them start to resent this, and they themselves eventually will have to resent this, because when they look back, what they're going to think back over the last 10 years is exactly that. So they're constantly, okay, can I just use that analogy? There's the two groups of people. There's the 5-day fasters that are constantly putting it all in. That's like your analogy of just taking all of your money. And so you don't have the laptop, whatever. But consequently, there's going to be, inevitably, there has to be, it's like the elastic effect. There has to be that pushback. There has to be, what I see is the 5-day fasters, the 10-day fasters. Again, I have nothing against extended fasting. I know I have a really bad rep for that. My issue is that a 5-day fast should be that extra punch. It should be that extra bonus that you throw in once in a while when things are going really, really well. Like when you're done great alternate day fasting. This is what I teach my people, right? At the end of that, if it's going really well, then you throw in a 5-day just to get that extra punch. Never as a punishment. Your analogy is brilliant. And then you've got the other people who absolutely never do an overnight fast. They're constantly doing the OMAD, or maybe they do some overnight fast, but never consistently, never 3 a week, never the rolling 42s. It's like every Monday they're doing an overnight fast because they're trying to pay back for the weekend. But then the rest of the week, they're like, oh, I tried to do an overnight fast, but I just have to have that meal in, and then that meal is a disaster. And so people are watching this, and they themselves, when they think back over the last 10 years, it's like nothing, they just haven't chipped away at it. It's been the exact same. And so there's just so much emotion and physicality that comes with this, so much weight, burden. It's like carrying that debt for 10 years. It's so heavy. I've also had debt, and it feels so heavy. And it's the same thing with what it feels like to have these conditions. And just, I don't know. I mean, your analogy is brilliant. I think it's brilliant. And it's exactly what I see. When really, what do we want from people? Just to be very, me, I'm very direct, very practical. Really, what do we want? We want you to do alternate day fasting for 3 to 6 months. I'm being very simplistic here because, of course, I know we need to individualize this. But really, 9 times out of 10, I say this to everyone, including my husband, what we want is for you to do 2 meal, no meal, 2 meal, no meal. The famous 42s, the gold standard, the rolling 42s. If you were to do that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to reach your goal. Is that hard to do? Yes, but I'm going to use Terry's words here. We're here to do hard things. Okay, we do hard things all the time. But it's a lot harder to do it this way, guys. It's a lot harder to be carrying this load for 10 years. No pun intended. And everything else, right? So if you do the alternate day, is it hard? Yes, it's hard. But does it allow for family time? Absolutely. Every other day, as opposed to no family time ever because you're constantly on a diet. Then you have blowouts. And so the people around you, your kids, your best friends, your spouses, what they're seeing is what Terri described. They're seeing you going completely nuts on days that maybe you had too much to drink or it's whatever. And they're like, well, didn't she just say she was on a diet? And you're now stuffing your face with, I'm sorry to be so blunt, because I think we all do this. And I'm speaking to Terri about this, not because I think only the losers do this or whatever. I'm using these bad terms because I want you to realize that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying, why is it that so many of us do this? What is it about us humans? And how can we, because if I'm getting bothered by this, it's because it's affecting me personally. It's because I see it in myself or I see it in those people close to me. Like, why do we do this, Terri? Why can't we just do the 2 meal, no meal, right? Then you get to spend time with your family every other day. So much opportunity there to throw in special occasions. So much opportunity there to create the right balance. I wrote a blog post about this, the right balance between eating and fasting, which is essential. You cannot do the all or nothing, okay? Only 5-day fasts are not going to work. And unfortunately, eating one meal a day, especially these blowout meals, is not going to work. So what's the in-between? Again, repetition, but it's this alternate day. But why? Why do we do this? I know I'm putting a lot on you, but really I am looking for some light for me, for others.
Absolutely. I'm going to share another quick analogy, and then I'm going to answer that bigger question, I think. When you were talking, it just brought up this image that I have used this analogy for many things when I was a therapist and working on things. And it was taught to me by one of my mentors. It was about digging into kind of difficult emotions. His analogy was that what many of us are used to doing is sticking with the pain just kind of long term. Exactly what you've described. If I'm doing this for 15 years and not really making progress, but always struggling, I'm feeling defeated, I'm feeling overwhelmed. He calls that holding pain. We're just going to hang in there, hold on to it, long term. And his analogy was a Charlie horse, a muscle cramp in your lower calf muscle, the back calf muscle. If any of you have ever experienced this, which I imagine most people have, at some point, that muscle cramps, it tightens very much. Your toes pointed down, your foot's pointing down. And for me, when it happens, it's usually the middle of the night. So you wake up in pain and you try to move your foot, but your foot won't move. What do you do to make it stop? I find I have to get out of bed and I have to step down. Now, Nadia's getting the visual here, but I have to step down on that. And oh my God, it hurts 10 times more. But that's releasing the pain. Now my muscle is back to its normal state. But I had to push through the more painful, harder part to get there. And what many of us, I think, struggle with, I know I do in lots of areas in my life, is we don't want to push through the harder part. But what we do instead is we hang on to this holding pain for a long time. It's like holding on to that Charlie horse for the next 5 days, 5 years, instead of just pushing it down and doing the harder part. So what a lot of us do when it comes to these behaviors, as you brought this up, Nadia, is we want to do it. We want to get to the other side, but it's almost like we push down a little bit and we're like, ooh, that kind of hurts. Oh, wait, I'm going to go do this. We don't finish pushing through. We don't hold ourselves in that place of whatever the task is required. Part of this, I think, also is part of how our brain works. I've talked with a lot of people about this recently in the new year. Many people come to me and say, Terri, I can do anything for 2 weeks. I can do 3 42s. I can eat the right food. I can do TRE, whatever goal they're working on. I'm really good at it for 2 weeks, and then I just can't anymore. I want to encourage everyone to challenge that. One, stop telling yourself that that's who you are, that you can only do the right thing for 2 weeks. But secondly, think about our brain gives extra time and energy to things that are novel. So when you say, I'm going to do this new thing, ooh, this is kind of cool. I'm really pretty good at this. And then it loses the novelty. And we're done by the end of January with our January plan. And now we have to create novelty again, and we start again. And now we do it for 2 weeks in February, and then we lose the novelty of it and we go off track. Every month or every 6 months or however frequently people get to this motivation place is like we dig in, we do the hard thing, it's novel, and we can do it until it's not novel. And now we've lost that energy for it. Our brain is like, I'm over this. I'm moving on. And where does our brain usually go? It goes back to where it knew before. So we do the new thing for 2 weeks and then we backslide. Then we do the new thing for 2 weeks and then we backslide. And suddenly it's 4 years of this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So we're going to mix a bunch of analogies here, but if you can really kind of figure out, what is my payback plan? How am I going to approach this? And then, dang it, I'm going to push that foot down to the floor all the way through that painful stretch. So I'm going to do this therapeutic fasting all the way through this painful stretch so that I get to be on the other side.
I got a comment here because this is why I love talking to you so much, right? Because, okay, first of all, these analogies are great. So often in my blogs, I write these, analogies like Terri, but with a lot of visualization. This image is going to stick with me for a long time of these analogies that you've shared with us. And I really like that Charlie horse analogy because that's exactly it. What does that remind me of? It reminds me when people tell us, that they're doing alternate day, right? Usually 2 meal, no meal, 2 meal, no meal, rolling 42s, however you call it or imagine it, is exactly that. It's like, oh my gosh, the fasting day was challenging, of course, because I ate yesterday. And so on the fasting day, but then when they finish that and it's their eating day again, or at the end of that fasting day, they feel so great. It must feel exactly how it feels when that Charlie horse is gone. It's like, I push through the pain and I feel so great. Every time I get to talk to somebody the day after a fasting day, not just a fasting day, but when they've done it consistently, they're almost like they're high on something, right? It must be the dopamine that you talk about or whatever it is, because it's such a great feeling. You feel so great about yourself, but there is some pain in there, right? Mm-hmm. But again, it's hard, but we do so many hard things and we do this all the time. We just don't even realize it. But I think that you're right, that this whole novelty thing is that when we go into it with that, so how do we change that mindset? I'm sure you've got some strategies, I hope, for us, but it's like, I think that is exactly what we do. It's like, oh, I'm totally going to do it. And it's just like, you got so much motivation. It's new. You do it for 2 weeks. And then the minute that something happens or you feel that you failed or whatever it is, you just completely go back to probably, I don't know, some type of, like you said, back to what is comfortable, or maybe you go to that pleasure part of your brain or whatever it is, and you end up doing the complete opposite, and I don't like that. I don't like that I do that too.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to recognize, as you just touched on there, Nadia, that this is not a weakness in some people. This is a human nature kind of thing that almost all of us struggle with. And if you are someone who doesn't, bravo to you. Please write a book so I can read it and share it with everyone. Because as humans, this is a very common struggle. And it's not just around fasting and eating. It's around relationships. It's around exercise. It's around financial things. It's all kinds of areas in our life. We can focus for a period of time and then we back off that focus. This is one of the reasons, and I know sometimes this feels like a target that a lot of us look at a lot and people don't really know why. This is why we focus so much on your why. Now I've said it so many times it's starting to sound weird, but what is your motivation? Why are you doing this thing? Why am I pushing my foot down? Because I want to go back to sleep because I can't right now. My leg hurts so bad. Why do you want to fast? Why do you want to do this? Because I want to get on an airplane and not have to wear the seatbelt extender anymore. Because I want to be that grandparent that can get down on the floor with my grandkids and get back up again. And right now I have a hard time getting into a chair. That's why I'm doing this. If you haven't really given enough time and exploration to why are you doing this, I guarantee you won't get there. We do not do hard things when the outcome seems insignificant to us. And you and I did an episode about this. It's got to be real. It's got to be important to you. And then we have to keep refreshing that. Now, I know this gets a little dicey for some people, but I'm going to take your time frame, Nadia, like you said. We really encourage, for most people, it's 3 to 6 months. For some people, it may be longer to do these therapeutic fasts. But I think for many of us, if we say that to ourselves in the beginning, okay, it's January right now. If I say, I'm going to do this until August, my brain is going to get overwhelmed. That feels daunting. So instead, I'm going to pick a shorter time frame to focus on. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it until August, but I'm not going to start focusing on that right now. Also, sometimes when we focus too far out, it lets that sneaky part of our brain say, well, we've got plenty of time. It won't matter if we just do this week or today. Mm-hmm. So instead, I encourage people, break it down into smaller chunks. I sometimes break it into 30 days. How many fasts will I do in 30 days? And then I just track that. I don't worry about what am I going to do in April. I worry about what am I focusing on this 30 days. Even that, and I know it doesn't sound like super fun novelty, but even that creates a little novelty to the brain. It's not, we're going to do this thing for the next 9 months. The brain shuts off on that eventually. But if the brain is only focusing on it in a shorter segment, we have more likelihood of being able to get it sticky, like Megan says, stick to it.
Okay, I have a thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like because my brain thinks like this, right? Like, okay, what's the practical? What's the strategy then? And so this is basically a question for you, Terri. Because of this new information, this novelty factor that I think is very useful information, I wonder if that doesn't sort of go nicely with our concept and idea of this step-by-step thing and don't skip steps, right? Mm-hmm. I always say that, I repeat that. And so I'm very big on, even if I'm working with an old client, right? I'm very big on going back to basics and doing things step by step. So what if you sort of, for the next 2 weeks, since that's how long novelty seems to last, I'm going to focus on TRE, especially guys, because you're all or nothing, right? You're a mess right now. So going to TRE should not feel like a step back, okay? Step by step. This is the first step. I always say TRE is the main event. It's the Beyonce of the show. It's the epitome of intermittent fasting. It is important to kickstart or restart your program. And we'll come back to that in maintenance. But you do 2 weeks. So it's novelty. 2 weeks TRE. First of all, and I'm going to say this in the masterclass, I'm going to repeat it here. If you haven't mastered TRE, you've got no business doing anything else, okay? I hope you guys laugh when I say these things because people that know me know that this is the way that I speak. I'm not trying to offend anyone. It's hopefully helpful, right? I'm always like, remember, I'm your coach. Keep your eye on the ball. Like I'm one of these big, coach from this big teams that you guys like to watch. But if you haven't mastered TRE, you have no business doing anything else, right? Mm-hmm. I want you to think like this in however way that you speak to yourself, maybe not that way. And then 2 weeks are up, you've mastered TRE. First of all, Terri has taught us that we need to celebrate our victories. So it's an opportunity for you to celebrate because that builds confidence and that's going to lead into the next step, which then would be, okay, now I'm in a good place. So practically TRE probably means 2 meals a day for 2 weeks straight. First of all, it gives you an opportunity to work on your relationship with food. It gives you an opportunity to have meals with your family. And as Terri has often said and said to me today, she would much rather, and I would much rather see you guys eat 2 really good meals than 1 blowout meal or like not eat for a day and then binge for the next 2 days. So TRE is always a win. Okay. So 2 weeks, all of a sudden, okay, you've mastered that awesome celebration. Woohoo, woohoo, woohoo. And if you don't know what that feels like, come into one of our community meetings, put up your hand and say, I have done TRE for 2 weeks straight. There's going to be so much hooray, hooray, celebration, so much dopamine that you're now ready for the next step before the novelty wears out. And now the next step would be something like a 2 meal, 1 meal alternate day. I call that my start here fasting protocol for therapeutic fasting. So 2 meal, 1 meal. Many of you guys recognize this as 24-hour alternate day fasting or rolling 24s or whatever. 2 meal, 1 meal. You do that for 2 weeks. Repeat, right? Copy paste whatever I just said about TRE. If you think that's a step back, you're wrong. It's a major step forward. Okay. And again, gives you an opportunity to work on your relationship with food. It now gives you an opportunity to start thinking about electrolytes for fasting, right? Because there's going to be a day there where you're doing 1 meal. So you're probably going to need some electrolytes. Gives you some practice there. It gives you an opportunity to work on your fasting aids. Do I need fasting aids? Do I not need fasting aids? Which fasting aids? Again, step forward, major step forward, and not skipping steps, doing this properly. Because I know you guys. I know you. You want to go from 2 meals to a 5-day fast. I know you. No bueno, okay? Don't skip steps. You can accelerate, but don't skip steps. And this 2 week is very accelerated. Mm-hmm. Then you go from 2 meal, 1 meal. I bet you, I'm going to say, you go 2 meal, no meal, alternate day 42, or rolling 42s or whatever. And then 2 weeks after that, maybe you're like, hey, I want to try Nadia's favorite, the 248s. It's something different, something novel, But then maybe you say, well, 248s didn't really like it that much. I was really good at the rolling 42s. You go back to that again. It's all new again.
Yeah.
Now you're ready to go, hey, I'm so good because you've been celebrating. Your friends in the community are telling you how amazing you are. You're an inspiration. Your dopamine is going through the roof. Now you say, hey, I bet you I can do a 5-day fast. Mm-hmm. And, rinse and repeat or whatever it's called. And so anyway, you knew I was going to have to come up with something because I'm all about coming up with a plan, right? But how does that sound, Terri?
Absolutely. And let's say I'm in the 342s for a while and I start to lose momentum. Great, change it up. Sometimes people hear us talk about changing up your plan and they think it's only because their weight loss is stalling, that would be why you would change up your plan. But there's also this, your brain is starting to stall. Your brain is wanting to slide back. Great, do something new. Get that novelty going. And then here's the other part. As I was listening to you describe this, and I loved the way you did that. It's like, do this for 2, then do this for 2 weeks, then do this. So you're just stacking novelty on novelty so it doesn't get old. The ideal, though, is that eventually it becomes habit, where we don't need the novelty anymore. Mm-hmm. We don't need it to feel brand new because now it's a habit.
Yes.
You teach your kids to brush their teeth.
Yes.
It's brand new and you have to reward them with a sticker every time they do it. But the goal is not when they're 45, they need a sticker to brush their teeth.
Yes.
The goal is that it becomes so second nature to them that they just do it automatically. And so I love this. It's like rolling through the new levels of novelty until you don't need new levels of novelty.
Okay, you just solved another big conundrum and dilemma for me. Why is it that some people get to a point where they're like, you know what, the rolling 42s is just second nature and it's not hard? Because I'm always like, why are those guys? Like, why can they do it? And those other guys can't. That's exactly it. Maybe they've gone through this, but they've done it long enough, in this step-by-step pattern, but then they've gotten to a point where especially I find with the rolling 42s, one of our coaches used to use this terminology, and I repeat it often. It's this nail and hammer. The rolling 42s feels like, it becomes second nature, like brushing your teeth. I love that, Terri.
Mm-hmm. So using this novelty thing, changing up what we're doing a little bit to get us really into it until we can settle into it as a habit. Now it's part of our daily practice or our weekly practice. I'm doing actually 336s a week right now. And right now for me, it's just today I'm eating, today I'm not eating, today I'm eating. It's like so second nature. I almost don't even think about it. But that's not how it began for me. Mm-hmm. I had to build into it. And, I've done a lot of different protocols and a lot of different ins and outs and things. But I guess the big thing that I hope the takeaway, I know we need to wrap up here, the takeaway from this episode is really the idea that Nadia and I are not pushing. Everyone right now should just jump into 100% therapeutic fasting and go for it. You have to know when it's the right time for you to move up to that therapeutic fasting level. Do you have all the supports in your life that kind of help you do that? If this is not a good time, let's say you're just recovering from being really sick and things are really stressful at work, great. Get into that holding pattern, work on some other skill building that you can handle during this time until you're at that place where you can increase to the therapeutic fasting. Then dig in. Push that foot down, get in there, figure out that financial plan, pay enough money that your debt's going to be paid in 2 years, but you're still going to have money to live on. Like, again, I'm just covering all of the analogies that we've talked about today, but make some of what you're doing novel, change it, keep focusing on your why because you've chosen to do this for really important reasons. And hopefully this is helpful.
I'm so glad we found the time to connect. It's so hard for us. We're 7 hours apart, but I'm so glad because I really wanted to talk about this with you. And I was right. This will be one of those podcasts that I will refer people to often. Thank you, Terri.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for thinking of this. And thank you all for being with us today, listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Please write a review. That helps us know that what we're doing matters. So please give us that feedback. And then I also want to just put this in. Remember, as Nadia has mentioned a couple times today, there will be an upcoming masterclass. And watch the newsletter. We will make further announcements about it. But if this is something you want to work on, learning more about the importance of TRE and how to do it, Nadia is your person, and there's going to be a masterclass on that. So take good care, everyone. Fast on, get your TRE going, take good care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.